I'm Dr. Manuel Astruc. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. I help entrepreneurs who are suffering from depression get back to being energetic, productive, and very confident. Side effects. Like everything has side effects. And there's certain side effects that nobody wants. And part of the problem with our psychiatric medications is our psychiatric medicines have a high degree of burden when we're talking about these side effects nobody wants. So what are those side effects? Let's start with what are the side effects nobody wants from their medications? People do not want to get more tired on their medications. People do not want to have difficulty with weight gain on their medications. And people do not want to have sexual side effects on their medications. Those are the top three. And guess what? There's a lot of psych meds that have those as very common side effects. The early antidepressants, so we're talking about what we call the monoamine oxidase inhibitors and the tricyclic antidepressants, had a lot of side effects, and some of them were very, very serious side effects, like life-threatening side effects. If you've ever picked up a over-the-counter medication for a cold that has decongestants and stuff like that in them, they'll always have this label warning on them. If you're on an MAOI antidepressant, don't take this. And I'll get calls, am I on an MAOI? And I tell patients, no. I stand on my head if I'm going to put someone on one of those medications because it's got interactions that are potentially life-threatening with multiple medications. And the tricyclic antidepressants were very, very heavy in terms of sleepiness, constipation, blurred vision, urinary retention, and they were also very, very dangerous in an overdose. So common practice right now is that someone who's depressed can get a month's worth of their prescription. Back in the day when we were using the tricyclic antidepressants, there was a clinical decision we had to make. Is someone so depressed and having suicidal thoughts to the point where I'm concerned about giving them a medication that if they take a bottle, it could be life-threatening. And it wasn't unusual back when I first started practicing psychiatry that we would do a week at a time for people who were really pretty depressed and in need of an antidepressant because those medicines were potentially life-threatening in an overdose. In the 1980s, the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, came out. So the first one was Prozac, and then there was a slew of them that came out shortly after that. And we were incredibly excited about these medications. There was some controversy around them. So there was a group of people out there that were concerned that we were using too many antidepressants and that they were dangerous and that they made people worse. There was a big outcry. But for people who were working in the field, who were dealing in the trenches every day with individuals, with our patients who were suffering from depression, it was just a wonderful thing for us to be able to add to what we had available because the side effect burden was so much easier to tolerate than what we had before, the tricyclic antidepressants and the MAOIs. That being said, these medicines still have side effects that can be a problem. The most common side effects that we see are problems with your stomach, so they can cause nausea, diarrhea. And in the long run, they can cause problems with weight gain. Not necessarily in the short run, but those are very common side effects that we see with these medications. What's interesting, when the medicines first came out, how the FDA will get these lists of side effects. If you've ever picked up a prescription at the pharmacy and they hand you your meds, there's a booklet with just like an encyclopedia of all the things that could happen. And if you see a medication on TV, they'll tell you like what it's for, and then don't take this if you have dot 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 dot, and it's scary, like the sorts of side effects that they talk about. One of the side effects that we didn't know about with the initial survey of side effects that the FDA had collated was sexual side effects. So there's two, and this is about 50% of people will have one of these. It's a loss of interest, loss of libido, or difficulty having orgasms. 50% of people have this. And nobody self-reported that when the medications were first being started. It's only as we started to get some experience using the medications kind of in the wild that we started to hear this from our patients. But 50% of folks will have that side effect, which is a deal breaker for a lot of folks. So stomach, nausea, weight gain, possible sexual side effects. And if you stay on these medications for a while because they're working, people will report a very unusual fatigue. What they tell me is that they're so tired on the medication. And on questioning, it's a very specific fatigue that people get. If you're not stimulated, active doing something, you sit down to take a little break and you like take a nap, like the sleep attack happens. As long as you're stimulated, engaged in watching something, talking to someone, reading, that doesn't tend to happen. So that fatigue is something that I'll hear about when someone's on the medication for months to years. There's a specific SSRI called Vybrid. It's still generic, it's still branded, that tends to have a lot less of the serotonin side effect burdens associated with it. So the fatigue, the sexual side effects, the weight gain, markedly less. What its biggest problem is that there can be a fair amount of nausea. So it's for a lot of people not tolerated because of its effect on your stomach. Albuterol or bupropion is a medicine that I use a lot of because in terms of side effects, it's probably one of the cleanest meds that we have available as an antidepressant. Generally, so this isn't to any medicine can cause any side effect at any time, but in general, bupropion or Wellbutrin, no sexual side effects, no fatigue, no weight gain. It can be sometimes a little hard on the stomach. It can sometimes cause some tremors, sometimes some ringing in the ears, sometimes a little bit of agitation. But in general, it's very well tolerated. And kind of as an aside, it's a medicine that we can frequently add to other antidepressants if you haven't responded to one, because it plays well in the sandbox with other antidepressants. Selective serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors are going to have side effects that are very similar to the SSRIs. There may be a little less of the sexual side effects. So we're typically talking about let's say 30 to 40% instead of 50% incidence or the rate of sexual side effects. They have one peculiar side effect that's associated with them, which is that you can get these sweats like out of the blue. Oftentimes it's at night. One of the side effects with the SNRIs. Telix is one of our newer antidepressants. Biggest side effect I've seen with that is really kind of GI, your stomach. It's hard to take for a lot of people because of the nausea that's associated with that particular medication. The last side effect I want to talk about is really what we call a discontinuation syndrome. So with some psychiatric medications, if you go to stop the medication and you stop it abruptly, you're going to feel horrible. And some of these medications cause that more commonly than others. So the ones that are the most notorious for causing this discontinuation syndrome are the SNRIs, which are Effexor or Cymbalta. Effexor is venlafaxine, Cymbalta is duloxetine. And discontinuation syndrome, people can feel like they have the flu, they get headachy, they get dizzy, they get nauseous. And one of the hallmarks that I hear from people that is incredibly disturbing to them are what they call brain zaps. So there's these electrical sorts of feelings that they get in their head. And I hear that word so many times from people that it's just very recognizable. I feel like I have electrical shocks in my head, brain zaps. When we need to change antidepressants or come off of those, it's really important to go down very, very slowly. Some of the SSRIs can cause that. Actually, let me change that. All of them can cause that. Some are more likely to cause that than others, and individuals are going to be more susceptible or more likely to get it than others. It's hard to know why, but if you've had it with one, there's a good chance you'll have it with another. Paxil has a pretty high incidence of discontinuation syndrome, but I've seen it with all of them. The one that's probably the least likely to cause discontinuation syndrome is Prozac or fluoxetine. And the reason for that is because fluoxetine has a very long half-life. It sticks around your body for a long time. So even if you stop it, it just takes it weeks to wash out of your body. So it just kind of comes out very, very slowly. So it decreases, tapers itself kind of naturally just based on how your body metabolizes it.